Real Estate channel. Ron from Ron Ready Law and Chad Griffiths. We're here to talk about, what are we talking about today, Chad?
The strike on the eastern ports, 36 ports. That's going
Absolutely.
on
I mean, it's
strike,
what,
45,000
45,000
workers, and what
longshoremen?
that's going to mean for, I guess, just for goods coming in, onshoring, reshoring, industrial real estate, impacts it'll have. I think there's a lot of strings we could pull on if we really wanted to go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's huge. I think this is twofold, depending on how long the strike goes on. But even the fact that were on strike for a day, or the fact they did it at all, I think does plant a seed of indecision in terms of industrial owners and tenants and users in the future.
Yeah, I think there's a lot at play on this because it isn't just the 45,000 people going on strike. It is everybody already has a lot to grapple with. We got the election coming up in November. People typically want to have some certainty or an outlook on what those results are going to be before committing to big decisions. So now this adds another wrinkle where it might cause a lot of people to just put plans on hold for the immediate future.
Yeah, and I wanted to take a more positive approach. I think we've talked about this shift after COVID from just in time inventory management to just in case. And to me, this is just one more needle. This is just one more haystack onto the back that is going to add to improving the case for just in case and expanding people's footprints on US based inventory.
Yeah, I think that just in case mentality has been brewing for more than just the last 5 years, where we had a lot of snarls in 2020. I think this has been percolating for decades now. And I think that there's also a case to be made that we should be given a much harder look to onshoring or reshoring some of the technology related stocks and inventory. Like most of the onshore and reshoring right now, and it's the CHIPS Act in the US, which has driven a lot of this. It's all high tech. It's semiconductors, EVs, gigafactories. There still hasn't been a lot of that traditional manufacturing making its way back to North America. And I think that this gives another case on why we should be looking to do more of that, put less reliance on shipping things across the ocean and then having bottlenecks in a port like we're going to be experiencing soon. I think that there should be more discussions made about, instead of just incentivizing the high tech companies to onshore, reshore, perhaps we should be looking to diversify that and make it available to more traditional manufacturers. So I think that this conversation, it's a good time to have this conversation.
Yeah, and if you watched some of the longshore guy, President Daggett, have you heard his speech? I mean, this
Harold.
guy is very passionate,
Yeah.
but he does go into a little bit of the rationale behind their demands. So other than just high pay, right? They wanted something like a 70-80% increase from COVID. I get that, just more money, but also they had this demand about automation. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, they want to have there's four main things from my understanding. They want a 77% raise over 6 years. They want some increased benefits and retirement packages, which ties into that financial compensation. But then they want protection from automation and protection from AI. And that's interesting. It reminds me a lot of early industrial revolution times. Like you look back at the Luddites, when you had all these textile workers and they just went crazy mad with the new machinery coming up. So they were all vocally opposed to it. Some were actually violently opposed to it and destroyed a lot of these machines for similar reasons. 200 and some years later, the whole premise is that if you think something can come in, take your job and displace you, it makes sense. I don't fault someone for wanting to fight back on something that's threatening their job and their livelihood. But it really does strike a tone on two sides. And I think this is a very messy and complex conversation. And this is certainly not black and white, that we can't just say we're for the unions or we're against the unions. It's much more complex than that, because there's so much at stake. And for the 45,000 people going on strike, they have a reason on why they're angry, and then there's people that are not going to be sympathetic to them at all and say we need progress. We the ports and other areas that are using automation and AI, they're much more efficient, they're much more profitable, they're much more better at getting goods quickly to the end user. So it's a conversation with a lot of nuance, and I don't know the answer to it. Well, what are your thoughts? How do you navigate through
Well,
something this
I want
complex?
to expand because their stance against automation is incredibly zero tolerance. They were saying zero automation at all, no robotics, and the only automation they were allowed was access control for a manual gate. That was like the only concession they left to automatic. And I think that's a problem because if I'm the port owner or the shipping companies, this type of strike only makes me double down and invest more into robotics. I want to have half as many guys. I want to have a third as many people that can strike like this because it's so disruptive to business. The fact I do think, you look at the Boston Dynamics robot, Tesla has their robot. A lot of the physical manipulation can be replaced pretty soon with these humanoid robots, plus automated shipping containers and different cranes and truck, what do they call them, like the skateboard platforms. That technology is coming, and I think they are pretty short-sighted to push for zero compromise instead of saying, let's get software training, let's get automated controls, like let's become drone operators. Let's retrain all of our longshoremen to become drone operators so it's safer. We don't get injured. We can be in climate controlled. We don't have to be outside, but let's become drone operators and do the containers that way.
It's a very good point. And I think one way that I could look at this is to say, if you were designing a network right now, like let's just say that there was no port on access on the eastern coast and the Gulf of Mexico, and you were trying to design something from scratch, it wouldn't look anything like what it exists right now for all the reasons that you mentioned. It's relying on 200-year-old technology, and that's how old that union is. The ILA is 200 years old. It hasn't changed a whole lot in those 200 years. You would undoubtedly design something from scratch much different than it looks right now. Like you said, there'd be drones and there'd be tons of automation, there'd be tons of AI integrated into it, but the whole system was built on this 200-year-old union that has made people in companies and executives and CEOs, that have made a lot of people very wealthy. So I understand that argument from that standpoint, that the system has worked. Is it optimized? Not anywhere close. If the most that they're willing to do is automate doors, then clearly there's a lot of opportunity to do that. They're pushing back, and I think I understand why. I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent, and this is you stop me or reel me back in. But I was thinking about this the other day with Second Amendment in the U.S. with guns. And I know this is going off on a tangent, but I think I can connect this back together. So I understand why proponents of the Second Amendment are vehemently opposed to any type of concession. And it's because as soon as you give up something, you're introducing the other side to just ask for more. So if they gave up one thing, they said, okay, you know what, fine, we'll relent to this one thing. We don't even really believe in it anyways, just hypothesizing there. But if they had that stance, they're like, yeah, no, that's fine. It's not even something we really want to fight for. All the other side is going to do is ask for more. They're just going to creep in a little bit more. And I think that that's why there's so much opposition to it on the Second Amendment side, is they're saying you give any kind of concession, before you know it, you've given away way more than you ever anticipated. So their line is, you can't negotiate with someone that always wants everything. If they want everything that you have, there's no sense giving them anything. And I think that that's what the ILA is positioning themselves here for as well, is if you give them anything. So if you say, okay, yeah, we have automatic doors, it makes sense that we have some automation on the dock itself, and you give that, then all of a sudden, then there's that temptation for them to say, well, what's a little bit of AI? Like, why don't we just throw a little bit of AI in here? And again, you're negotiating the ILA, you're negotiating with the other side that wants everything. And rightfully so. Again, if we were to design something from scratch, we would have it look completely different. So the other side wants complete reform. They want to change the entire thing. And that would mean significantly less employees. You could train some to operate drones, and you could put them in different positions to succeed, but I doubt it'd be anywhere close to 45,000 people. There would be considerable displacement. So I'll let you talk, because I just want to wrap up
no,
that
no,
train
no.
of thought.
I think that's a great analogy. And I think this is probably what makes you a great broker. You really understand the other side. And I think what it comes down to is Daggett and the longshoremen are negotiating for the next 6 years for all of their existing members. What is the best possible outcome for the next 6 years for these guys today? And the difference in our earlier analogy, because I love it, if we were designing a brand new port in, Tampa or something, or a new city, it would be designed for 30 years, 50 years of operational efficiency. And that's the difference in time frame of the goals. And so naturally they're going to have different goals, because the executives, or I don't even know who they're negotiating. Is it the shippers, or is it the port itself, the owners of the port, the operators of the port? They're like tenants, though. Don't they usually lease the port from the government? So
yeah. I did see something on it. I don't want to make an incorrect statement on it, but I'm assuming you're right. It's got to be somebody that's overseeing all of it, regional authority or some sort of economic body would be my guess.
So their time frame is longer, and it impacts a broader number of people. Hopefully they care about society, consumers in general, consumers in their immediate distribution area, versus the longshoremen are making the decisions based on 6 years for themselves only, versus a very different. And that's what's producing different outcomes, because they have different time frames. I don't know. I think that technology will probably eventually win. What do you think? I mean, are you more bullish that this will further spur more investment into automation, or will this be something that we deal with like a kind of a thorn in our side, which I don't know.
Yeah, I think you can only delay progress. I don't think you stop progress. And there's plenty of examples of that. Even going back to the Luddites, machinery came in. They stopped it temporarily, but eventually machinery won out, and the world looks completely different as a result. There's even a story in my city, and I bet that this was ubiquitous across the world, when Uber started coming into cities and displacing the traditional taxi industry. In our city, the cab drivers were so many his shirt and was twirling it around, just irate at Uber coming in to mow his grass. And there was a huge fight, and it took some time, but Uber won out, and now Ubers are everywhere, and cab drivers have probably lost a considerable position and income just as a result of that. So I think it's inevitable. I don't know when that happens. Is it this 6-year cycle that the ILA eventually wins? And because I think that they will win. I just don't think you can shut things down. I don't think there's nearly enough systems or infrastructure in place to make radical reform. At some point it's going to happen, because that technology is already there. There are already ports already doing this. So it's not even one of those things that the union is saying, well, if somewhere down the road you guys get to this level, it's already there. So rightfully so, they're concerned, and I don't blame them. If I was one of those 45,000 workers, I'd be very concerned as well. So if you can band together as a union, that's what unions are for. I'm not pro-union or anti-union for that matter. I just understand, I sympathize with what they're going through, and they're holding cards right now. They've got power to do this. It won't last forever, though. I just don't think it will.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that piece, because I think that the impacts of this strike are less disruptive if this only goes on for a couple of days, right? Less than a week, less than 5 days. The disruption will be within allowable tolerances, people's existing stock. We're not going to impact the holiday shipping. So retailers are not worried about stocking up for Christmas. But if this thing goes on for more than a week, we're talking like 10 days, what would you do as an investor near some of these port cities? I mean, how do we make money with our commercial real estate?
That's a great question. I would say do nothing, is my thoughts, and I would do nothing. Industrial real estate specifically is a long-term asset. There's always going to be these ebbs and flows and things that happen in the market, and I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't look at this as an opportunity either. I think that this is going to have major implications on the market. I read that every day they're on strike, there's $5 billion lost in economic activity, which is a considerable amount. Then you just have everything gridlocked, so you're not having all the normal things coming in. So there's so much that actually is at stake in this, and it is going to be big. I don't think anybody should be downplaying this. If it does go on for longer than a few days or a week, this will be a problem. But from a real estate standpoint, I'd be very reticent to make any rash decisions based on something that could be resolved in a
But this
day.
does make you more bullish. The fact that it did occur, it makes you more bullish as a tally mark in the column, right, of pro industrial for the next 5 to 10 years.
I think so, for the reasons that you mentioned. I think that just in case manufacturing methodology, I think that's going to be more prevalent. I think this is just another way that people should be genuinely afraid, for whether it's companies selling things, whether it's warehouses in North America. They should all be looking to add more inventory, because if they don't, and this strike does go on for some period of time, getting things here, whether everything has to be rerouted to the Pacific side or to Canada or to Mexico, that's just going to cost more money. It's going to take more time. It just reinforces that idea that warehouses should be holding more inventory in stock, and doubling down on that point that I made earlier about reshoring. There should be more manufacturing happening in North America beyond the high tech. We really should be concentrating on making more things in North America and having less of a reliance outside of North America.
The challenge to do that, though, is when you have lower margin goods that you're trying to manufacture in the US, or even nearshoring, the delivery costs and just operational costs are so high. It's very few companies that can still make a profit doing business in the US. I mean, just look at like insurance. Just insurance as a cost in North America is going to be way more than anything in Asia or overseas. And I feel like that's the impediment, right? Just doing business when you have a 3% or a 4% margin, how are you gonna manufacture something outside, Northern Virginia, when your insurance cost eats up 100% of your profit?
Well, I think that speaks to the ideology that we have as Western consumers, where we just love stuff and we love stuff as cheap as we can get it. And I think we could challenge that idea and say, we don't always need everything, and we don't need it at the cheapest possible price, because most of those things don't factor in all the externalities as well. You get something shipped from made in China, shipped across the ocean, shipped across the country by rail, delivered by delivery truck to a warehouse, then delivered by a van to your house for the cheapest price imaginable. That doesn't account for everything involved in that entire value chain. So I think that is some, and I don't know, I don't have the answer to that. That's me speaking like I'm going to all of a sudden start
That's right.
paying a little bit
No
more for
more,
things just because I say it should.
you can't buy 10,000 Legos. You limit yourself to 1,000 made in USA Legos.
But would people be willing to pay a little bit extra for that? Would people pay a little bit more to have Lego that they knew was made in the US versus made somewhere that they have no idea where it is? Perhaps.
I think maybe yes. I think we're seeing a trend a little bit in fashion and like clothing, durable goods get a little bit more. If there's something there about the quality that makes it made in USA, like a belt. Okay, I'm just speaking for myself. I will pay more for a European or whatever that's not just made in Asia or Thailand or Burma or wherever, I'll pay a little bit more because I think I can see the quality. But yes, I think there is a trend if things are also more reliable. If they're better made, I don't like disposing of things because when stuff breaks, it's a hassle for me, and that's what I'm paying for is to avoid the hassle of something being cheap, breaking, and then me having to buy a new one. So if you can get the consumer to understand that logic, then I think you're right, and then I think America is back. We want high quality, reliable goods because we value your time as a consumer, not because you're going to buy the cheapest set of knives, 10 knives, because one breaks and you just throw it away. Why don't you just buy 8 and not have to deal with breakage?
Absolutely. And I'm the same way. I will spend more for a better product. Shoes are a good example. If you buy cheap dress shoes, they might last you a year. If you buy a pair of Allen Edmonds made in the US, so I have Allen Edmonds that are 15 years old. So I would always be willing to pay more for quality. But I also think there's a case to be made that just having things made here has benefits that go beyond just the reliability. There's all of a sudden jobs get created here. If you have jobs that get created here, then you've got population growth because people will move towards jobs are. Then you've got real estate as an asset starts to do better. So you start having all this taxation around the board. There's an economic benefit to the municipalities and the state and the country. That I think those economics can be studied more deeply to actually see, like, does it make sense? Will people pay a little bit more if it's even just made in the US versus made in China? And let's not forget, we're fighting an economic war right now with China. And so everything that we do, every dollar we spend over supporting them, we're contributing to their side of this economic war. So I'm a big proponent of made in Canada, made in the US, made in Mexico. I think we should have more independence and not make decisions solely on getting it for the cheapest price. I don't need to get a shirt for $6 that was made in China and then shipped here when I can spend a little bit more and get a better quality product and is made in North America. So this strike, and I think this happens every time there is something like this, whether it is that the Ever Given, the ship got stuck in the Suez Canal and that caused all kinds of bottlenecks. You had COVID when people weren't even going into work. There was bottlenecks. Now you have this strike, which would be bottlenecks. Every one of these things is just another reason on why companies and us as the public should really be looking inward as opposed to trying to fight outward facing problems. We can't control most of the things that are happening that are bottlenecking this. So instead of trying to fight it, let's just find solutions inward. And they're there. Like if you look at the Rust Belt right now, which I think that whole area needs a rebranding, there are a ton of qualified, capable workers eager to work. And they are ingrained in that manufacturing area of business. There's capacity to actually add things. We lack a few things on why we get it done, but to avoid sounding redundant, I just think we need to be focusing more on finding solutions within North America than trying to be overly reliant on other countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you've hit on it, and what I hear is instead of buying 6 T-shirts for $6 each, we should just buy 2 T-shirts for $10 each, or 3 T-shirts for $10 each, and that's the shift that the American consumer has to make in order for all of these benefits and self-sustainability of North America to come back. Um, I think we do get a lot of benefits from made in Mexico, for example. So all of my arguments about cost of labor and insurance costs, whatever, maybe those are mitigated if we do it in Mexico. And now we've got north-south rail plus trucking. That still counts in my book. I mean, that's still avoiding the overseas, over an ocean issues. So
Yeah, because even if there's rail issues, you still have commercial trucking that can get it within North America. It'll be challenging because it really is a chicken and an egg scenario. Do more manufacturers try to reshore into North America, hoping that the consumer starts adapting and changing their pattern. And again, there's ideological things at play there. Or do customers just start changing that first, and then all of a sudden manufacturers follow because there is a demand for to have things made in the USA, made
Well,
in
maybe
Canada.
if Trump wins, then he's gonna kickstart this onshoring with his tariffs, and that will be a kick in the pants that we've never seen before.
Well, that's one thing that Donald Trump is excellent for, is he has a very clear America first mandate. And people can say whatever they want about his policies or how he governs or his personal life. They can say anything about that, but that American first stance should resonate with Americans first. Is that's what he's trying to do. He is trying to bring more into North America. He wants more manufacturing across the board. So politics aside, I don't think that that's a bad stance to have for any country. You want to maximize the value and happiness and wealth of your citizens first, not someone in another country. So I think it's a great philosophy to have.
Well, that's going to have to be a topic for another live stream where we talk about Trump versus Harris. And we only have a month to do this. Okay. We're coming up on the election. But I think I agree. It's incredible how people can still, politicians can say with a straight face, we need to send another X billion dollars over far, far away for multiple things. And people here in your country, call them voters, are going without, and they're in suffering. It really does kind of blow my mind. But money talks.
Especially since it's money we don't have. Like we're sending money that we're borrowing off our credit card. That's what makes it even more puzzling to me, is that if we had a big bank account and we're like, okay, let's go help our friends, and as you mentioned, we're helping everybody else as well, and we just have this surplus money, so let's go and support other people, then maybe there's an argument for it. But as you mentioned, there's people in our own countries that are struggling financially, and we're giving money that we don't have. We do not have this money. We're giving it to other countries. I agree. I find it puzzling as well.
Well, the world may never know, but the election will be a big referendum on what the American voters care about, because I think their positions could not be more crystallized at this point. And, they say they're talking about 3 or 7% of the voters. They're trying to change their mind. Everybody else has already made up their mind. They're either pro-Trump or they are anti-Trump. And they're like, why are you voting for Kamala? Because she's not Trump. I mean, clearly.
Mm-hmm. That's what it seems to be.
All right. Well, we'll keep the politics for the end. Thanks for hopping on, Chad. I know this was last minute, but I mean, to me, as an investor, I just think these are all positive tick marks in the ledger. To your point, I will not change anything, but it just makes me more bullish for the longer term future. There's going to be more demand for industrial, and you got to subscribe to this channel and follow Chad. I'll drop a link to his channel to learn more about how to do it smartly and make money. So
one quick thing, let's place a farmer's bet on how long this strike lasts, and we can look back on it and see which one of us was more wrong.
All right. I will take the under 7.
Under 7. So you think within a week?
You think? I mean, what's yours? We'll keep it kind of interesting.
I think this is going to be prolonged.
So you think you'll take the over 7?
Yeah, I'll take over 7. I like the money. I don't think that they're that far apart. Like, I think the most recent concession they had is they agreed to 50%. So that going from 50 to 77%, that's obviously it's a big number, but it's not insurmountable. It's not like they're off by a crazy amount. What they are off by a lot is that not allowing automation and AI to take jobs. Like you're just handcuffing yourself if you're agreeing to too much on that. So I think that is going to be the sticking point on this, is how far each is willing to go. So I'm taking the over.
All right. Well, we will tune back in. If I lose, then you can get some Texas barbecue sent up to Canada. That's the wager. You can't have a bet if there's nothing at stake. By the way, I'm a firm believer that's not a bet. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm the same way. It's I'll think of something.
Okay.
It'll be worth it. It'll be something Canadian, some maple syrup or something.
All right. Perfect. Well, thanks again, Chad. It was good chatting with you as always, and signing off for everyone who tuned in.